Clock. Call the meeting to order. All board members are present except for our student representatives who are not going to be here tonight. We had one addition to the agenda that was mailed out today or emailed out today, so you got that. Otherwise, there are no other additions, so we'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Cheryl moves. Second. Cheryl seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It passes. We have public comment tonight. The first one I have is from Nick and band parents. Now, before we do that, let me have to go through our procedures here. This is to remind the board more than anybody else, but this is the procedures we have for public comment. First of all, it says that remarks will be addressed to the whole board. You're talking to all of us. Even when communicating difficult issues, it is important to remain respectful and dignified in our communication. A 5-minute time limit will be established for each participant. Maximum 20 minutes. We don't have to worry about that tonight. In general, the board will not respond to the information received during the comment. We want to listen to you. We want to hear what you have to say. We're not here to get into dialogue. We just want to hear what you have to say. In order to communicate in an effective manner, please keep public communication to 2 or 3 main points and articulate those points as directly and clearly as possible. And lastly, the superintendent will follow up with all participants of public comment. So, having said that, we invite Nick, or who's going to speak?
I'll speak first. I go up here, right?
Yep.
Yep. I did before.
Are you the only one speaking?
No,
Man,
one more coming up in a
you
minute.
got 5 minutes total.
Okay. That's fine. Hi, I'm Nick Flottam. I'm the band director here, of course. Today I'm just wanted to talk about just some exciting things that are happening in the band program. We developed a booster program with some band parents that helped develop a kind of a big day for the band as a whole. We did a big fundraiser at Queen Bee's, I guess close to almost a month and a half ago now. We raised quite a bit of money, and thanks to the Lions Club, they helped us with a lot of logistics to make it happen. And so I want to invite Doris up here to talk about a little bit about what the logistics on the day and everything like that.
I'm Doris Wetland, and on behalf of the Paynesville Lions, I am here to present to the Paynesville Band Booster Club. It'll be a check for $14,004.15 would be what they made. And on that day, on February 18th, we had quite the crew that came into work. We had Christine Story, Brittany Frank, Christine Strong, Melanie Weber, Rachel Brown, and Jennifer Wetland. Plus we had our Lions group, and we had in attendance that day 297 people, with selling of 314 packages for our Paynesville sportsmen's, or it was the Paynesville Lions and the school sportsmen's bingo we had. And with that, the check will be tomorrow, due to the fact of, as I thought the meeting was canceled tonight due to the fact. Sorry. But have a certificate that is awarded to the Paynesville Booster Club, and without the volunteers and Mr. Fladden to put this on, it probably would have never happened. So I really, really do appreciate, and so does the Paynesville Lions, that we gave them just about the full amount of the money of $14,000. So.
That is all. I just wanted to say what's happening here. I don't know if you got and I gave Janelle a handout kind of on what we were thinking of purchasing with this money. There's a lot of improvements that can happen. I could show you some instruments in the band room. Times I felt like the baseball team used it to see how aggressive they can hit an instrument with a bat. I know that didn't actually happen, but there's a lot of dents and some that look like they need to be replaced. So I'm glad to have stuff like this to make that happen. So.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Rob Butch has comments, so invite him to come up to the front.
Good evening. My name is Rob Butch. I'm just here to bring attention to some things that are going on in our school district. It has been in our local school district, 741. Spring prom has not been held within our own school district since the year 2017. Kind of wondering why. This coming spring, prom will be heading to Osakis to the venue called Crooked Willow. This is a very high-end venue costing thousands of dollars. You can go online and look that up for yourselves. The cost of the venue runs between $6,000 and $7,000. This does not include food, table linens, decorations, entertainment. For most students, this is their first formal event. Why do they need to start with this type of a venue? How are the future proms going to compete with this? It seems like we are setting some very high standards where it is all, and where is all this money coming from? There are at least 5 businesses within our own school district, 741, that would be certainly asked, if we're asked, would be interested in hosting the local prom. Also, within the last several years, taxpayers in the school district have approved a $16 million referendum providing access to the new community activities center and careers and technology center, as well as approving a operating levy in the year 2022. It has been suggested that prom could be held at the PAC building and the post-prom in the gym cafeteria. As a business owner, I again received a letter asking for support for the post-prom committee. The cost of this year's party, according to the support letter, is about $8,000. It is frustrating that the local businesses are expected to support these activities while the event itself is being taken out of town. I would hope that the committee would keep these events within our school district. The students and parents should understand the importance of supporting our community, and how about keeping our prom in the local school district? Sometimes I think we should practice what we preach. In the future, it would be appreciated if support were given to the businesses in the school district 741. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have, we get the next page over, Connie. Connie Messer has public comment.
All right, so I'm Connie Messer and this is Heather Lee. This is our first year volunteering to run the post-prom. We as a committee would like to clear up some information that was brought to our attention. Our post-prom activities are held in the high school, in the PAC, after the prom activity. Our main goal as a committee is to have a safe, fun place for the kids to go. And it also invites the kids who aren't going to prom, they can also come to the post-prom. They don't have to attend prom. It's a fun, relaxing place where they can have food, beverages. We have a hypnosis coming in. We have a comedian coming in. We got some knocker balls coming from Wilmer. So we did send letters out asking for donations from the local businesses and the families of our juniors and seniors. Without our community families, volunteers pitching in, we would not be able to make this happen. We do know that. We want to inform everyone that the donations that come to the post-prom are going to be used for post-prom only. They do not support prom, which is going to Osakis. They stay in the community. We are going to do our absolute best to buy everything we can in the community. We plan to go to Ted and get an e-bike. We plan to go to Fleet and get a paddleboard. Munlux and St. Martin to get some kayaks. All of our food will come. We're using the coffee shop in the school. Teals to get water, Senex to get the pizzas. I supply some of the food from my business. Yeah, so we just want to let everyone know the post-prom, the ones that sent that letter, we are going to do our best to keep it here in the community. We really are. We're going to go Friday and connect with businesses, answer questions, and purchase items. So we just wanted to clear up the letter that went out versus prom to protect our names. It's on there. Yeah. All right.
Okay. Now we move on to the consent agenda. You want to
Yep.
highlight anything?
First I'll let Cheryl, speak to bills if there was anything, from the bills that you wanted to highlight.
I cheated. I did it from home.
Come on, Cheryl.
Second time ever, so. There really wasn't anything that Janelle's not going to speak to. And, the questions I had, I contacted Janelle and she answered them quickly and easily and everything was pretty much kosher as far as I could see.
What was the quarter unemployment? What was that, our quarterly payment for that?
I can look in,
Or we can have it the next meeting, I
Yep.
guess.
this quarter.
Just want to know what the unemployment's costing us.
Yeah, and I have a vague number, but I'm gonna confirm because I don't like to speak without confirming, so.
Next week or the week after.
Yep, nope, I will get that for you from the last quarter. Just as an aside, it's typically not very high because the only breaks that we have in this last time period would be like over Christmas or.
I just like to ask I'd like to know what the final number is. I know
Yeah.
everybody's real vague and yeah, I know.
Yep, nope, I'll get it for you for sure. Yep. And then also a couple of other things, personnel related. We have one last overload reporter. Brad Nepson is a shared staff between the elementary and the secondary. You'll see we are filling out our coaching staff. I want to highlight Perry Filippi. Perry's gonna get after me for saying his name wrong. Perry was an employee that we were able to bring on through a cooperation with LAM. And that really was a really nice opportunity for us to partner with LAM and find somebody who was looking for work in our community. And he's done a great job within our staff. So we're excited to have him on board, which is kind of fun. A couple of acknowledgements that I'll put in there for resignation. Laura Nyokis, science teacher at the secondary, is a great loss for us. She's done a wonderful job. But she has an amazing opportunity in front of her. And so we wish her well. But,
She resigned as teacher.
she's resigning as teacher. Yep, she sure is. So, so those are the personnel items. Donations, I do want to call out. I already have it up there, but that's okay. I want to call out our donations for today. You will see the acknowledgement of the formal acknowledgement of the FFA money that we received last board meeting. And then I also would like to call out a $20,000 donation from the Baseball Association with the intention of replacing the sound system in the gym. I was our volleyball team and basketball teams, and they were approached as, is this something that we could do? And we're grateful for that donation. So thank you to the Baseball Association. And then next month, we'll be able to formally recognize the donation for, from the band boosters into the band. So that'll be fun as well. So thank you to our donors. We do appreciate the donations that come in. So those would be the consent agenda items for review today.
Is there a motion to accept the consent?
I'll make a motion. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Get that, Miranda?
Good. It's quick.
Okay, communication items, starting with the administrative report.
So administratively, a few things for you. We had the MASA, MSBA Day at the Capitol, this last week. And really, so it's kind of what that highlights is there's a House and Senate panel that present, their priorities for the year. And it's really, some of the key takeaways that they brought forward was that they were really proud of the work that's been happening thus far to correct the SRO, the School Resource Officer bill that created some unintended consequences last legislative session. And it was actually really nice to see bipartisan support to get some work done on that bill. So that was a nice discussion and presentation. There also was some agreement across the board, both the House and the Senate, that we need to have some discussion about the READ Act. I think the READ Act has been it's wonderful legislation that is really going to help how we teach kids to read. There were just some unintended consequences of timelines of who who the requirements are applied to, and some work like that needs to be confirmed, clarified, fine-tuned. And there was a mutual agreement that should be happening for that work and for the READ Act in this upcoming session. So that was exciting. Just a couple of key takeaways. The governor's budget was released, and as he has been hinting on, this is not a budget year, and the conversation surrounding education funding was not fruitful, and there was no additional new money allocated to education, which we were always hopeful, even though it's a bonding year. You know, when you have a surplus, you might have a conversation, but he really has hinted, and his budget is consistent with his preliminary conversation about being mindful of what's to come. So that came out in the last couple of weeks as well. Just as a reminder, we are guaranteed with 2% new funding for 24-25. So that does bring our per pupil formula up $143 to $7,281. This year was 4%, next year is 2%. So that's just the end of that budget session. We are going to be reviewing enrollment projections and budget decisions. We just have to remember that this time of year is filled with many moving pieces. And so that's something that when we look legislatively and we talk about, and I do work advocating at the Capitol or having conversations with our representatives, I just try to remind them about the unpredictability and the mandates that come with the funding. You know, we really just try to say, be cautious and mindful of mandates without funding them. We would just like to have that local control at the board level. So just some legislative timelines that I pasted down there for us to be aware of. This legislative session is going to go really quickly. And March is really a time where we've in the years past highlighted what's been happening legislatively. So I also want to share that principal interviews took place last week, last Thursday. We had 5 candidates. There was a committee of 26 individuals, which included staff, students, parents, and a board member, along with administration. The committee identified a top candidate, and conversation is taking place with that individual to move forward. So I'm excited to hopefully very soon be able to announce our new principal. And then lastly, I was able to attend a keynote speaker with the MASA MACE Leadership Conference. Dr. William Doherty is his name, and he's with Braver Angels. You know, we hear a lot about conflicted perspectives and how polarized some of our communication has become. And it was really actually very timely just to have really good reminders on how as leaders and as board members, you all are leaders, how you can listen to hear, not necessarily to respond, and to hear the concerns and to have different perspectives. And it was just a good reminder for me as well. So I just wanted to share those administrative items with you before I move on to the revenues and expenditures. Any questions about any of those? Okay. I do have linked in the revenues and expenditures. Revenues there's not a whole lot to carry or call out right now. Oops, this is our expenditures, sorry. Our revenues, so again, if you come all the way over to February, you're gonna see, so again, we're at the end of March, so bills are everything is tallied through the end of February. And you can see that we are, from where our projected end of the year budget to our, percent of the budget received for revenues. You can see some are 50%, some are 16%. Again, our revenues aren't always super predictable, but we do bank on those and we know that over the course of time, they will come. Our revenue expenditures, something I just want to point out to you, and it's really for multiple parties, but just to kind of call out, when you look at the expenditures, and you have salaries and wages and employee benefits, just be mindful and remember that this dollar amount includes every employee within the school district. So it's administration, it's teachers, it's paraprofessionals, it's support staff, it's our custodial staff. Every employee group is included in there, and then our employee benefits, that includes everything from our payroll taxes to our PERA, our retirement, our TRA, our teacher retirement. It's got the benefits for unemployment insurance. It's got all of the things that are costs for all employees. So I just want to make sure that it's clear that that's everybody across the district. And that also includes the whopping salary that you receive as board members. So I just wanted to call those out and make a reminder that is everybody all inclusive. So any questions on the revenues or expenditures before I move down? Okay. So our student representatives, that I did get an email from them that they just were not going to venture in with the weather. So we'll get an update from them next month. Committee organizational reports, any negotiations.
Negotiations are going on. I think there's one more that isn't listed at the bottom. I think we are meeting Thursday, right? This Thursday.
We had to reschedule our teacher negotiations meeting from yesterday to Thursday.
Yeah.
Yes.
Otherwise, all of them are moving. And you're all on one of the committees, so.
Yeah. And then there is a continuing ed meeting that had to be rescheduled as well. I believe that was rescheduled for April 2nd, Thursday. Okay. And then district-wide staff development is a little ways out yet, but so there's committee meetings coming on. West Central Ed, anything that you wanted to highlight with West Central Ed?
Yes, a couple of things. There was they've been looking for some time right now as far as the director that they have for it. She has been speaking for a while as far as a planned retirement for her. And there has been requisitions out there to get people in, but there's just really not a lot of folks are putting in for it. So we move forward with approving actually some expenditures to bring in somebody that would be like an executive director, but under training to get somebody to I guess bring them up to speed in not necessarily a very short time, but within the next couple of years. So we do have Lori that does retire, the person can step into that. And then the next thing that we had approved, I call it the U-Zone house only because people are familiar with that in our area, not necessarily in the other districts. There is some talk of whether or not they want to continue to use the U-Zone house because of, when I say the association of that, how it had been used in the past as far as a place for kids to go that need help. But that there's a contract that has gone out to use that place for the 18 to 21-year-olds with special needs to continue their education to help them, when I say fit into society, but prepare them to go out as far as just those normal day-to-day things that you would use in a household and how to function with that. So that has, like I said, that's been set up as far as this contract. Along with that, we did approve as far as bringing staff in for that and to start to lay out a curriculum for that.
Yep. So Gerald, I think one thing I just want to add is that that really is the role of the education district, is to provide programmatic opportunities for kids that, we as a school district, we are obligated to provide the service, right? And because when students are eligible for service from 18 to 20, and the law just changed to be 18 to 22 years old, we have to provide that in some capacity. The education district, West Central Ed District, is able to do it on a larger scale and more cost-effective manner than if we were to do it in-house. And so it really is it's a wonderful opportunity for our students because they have some familiarity with the U zone. But it's also really advantageous for our students because they'll be able to foster those work relationships within the community where they're going to be living. And so there's some really great opportunities that are coming, and it's not an expense to us as a school district, unless we have students going there, and then we would have students, that would have been a cost we would have had to incur anyways. So it's a great opportunity for students. And I was excited to hear that the Central Ed Board approved that program moving forward. So thank you for that.
And I think, you bring up a good point, as far as incurring cost, and what as far as this co-op being with that West Central Ed District. So yeah, we would incur costs for students that went there or will be going there. But what we're not incurring costs are the teachers and putting together the curriculum and that. So really, we're saving money by being in this co-op with West Central Ed District versus moving forward on our own, being independent.
So this will be starting up immediately?
For
Next year.
Next year, yeah.
Next year. Yep.
Facilities committee met earlier this month and
Yes.
dove in pretty deep around just our facilities in general, the softball field, renovations and opportunities for that. Maintenance throughout the buildings, both buildings, some issues that might be going on that I know Ken's working really hard on with some other folks, and then roofing is always the conversation.
Yep.
Where are we at with that? And it sounds like Ken's got a pretty good handle on the start of all those conversations, so we'll just keep up to date on that. I don't know if anybody else wants to add anything, but that's really the three main conversations.
Any other committees? Then we'll move on past old business to new business with the 24-25 budget information.
So this is the first discussion in budget, which is our section determination. You're going to notice this looks a little bit different this year, because I'm not asking for a recommendation. And the reason I'm not asking for recommendation is because it's too fluid and there are too many moving parts. And so a couple of things that I'll just kind of scroll over and show you. So over the course of years, so we're going to be looking forward to the 24-25 school year. And that's really where we need to determine how many sections will we host of each grade level. Okay. And you can see historically, it's pretty much been 3 to 4. 2 years ago, we had a low enrollment number of our kindergarten students. And so we went from 3 sections down, or from 4 sections down to 3. The 76 was, with the asterisk, was the number of kindergarten roundup, kindergarten invitations that went out. 67 is what we were kind of predicting at the end of kind of a target deadline. So that's what precipitated the 3 sections. And the 66 that's in parentheses is how many were in seat on the 15th of September. Okay. So looking forward to this year. So we sent out 79 invitations. We had about 59 that came to a roundup and 75 ended up starting. Okay. So as you can see, that's what precipitated our 4 for our kindergarten section. So now looking forward, we've got some dilemmas, right? And we have some conversations to have. And I say a dilemma in a good way, but we just have to figure out the right solution. Okay. And I don't have a recommendation for you yet, but I have some discussion points for you for us to consider as we move forward and throughout the next month. So 77 invitations went out, and when I say invitations, that's students that are eligible to come into kindergarten. Okay. 44 students are registered as of It was as of Thursday when I did the board agenda. So Thursday, Fridays, what we had was 44. You'll notice that if we have that many kindergartners, we had a really large kindergarten class this year that's going to move up. And if you have 74 first graders in 3 sections, those are really big classes, okay? Now, if we don't have 40, if we have, let's say we have 55 kindergartners come in, and now is where I'm gonna speak a little bit vaguely, and I'm gonna invite Cassie to step in with any kind of clarifying information here. But we have to take a look at where we could offer a multi-grade classroom and what makes the most sense to try to offset some of those larger classes when you have a smaller section. If you look up to our second graders, next year's second graders, there's 62. That's a smaller class, okay? So depending on how many numbers of kindergartners come in, we have some options to look at either grouping some first and second graders, or if we have a lower number of kindergartners, we could group some kindergartners first grade. Kathy has been having a lot of conversation with staff about the possibilities, about the options. But at this moment in time, I'm not ready to make a recommendation to the board about what it should be until we have a little bit more time to let that pan out. So with that, I just want to open up any questions that you might have about that, or how that, any kind of logistics of that.
In the past, so if we have 44 registered now, do we have kind of an idea of what happens over the summer or in the next few months and then the summer? Give us some kind of idea. Do we get a lot or is it not?
So I can share with you the last, my last 2 years. I don't have a lot of historical understanding of that. I can tell you that we are up to 53.
Oh, good.
Oh, okay.
In the most recent time, last Friday, Amy Spanier and Rachel Brown made phone calls to all parents on our registration list who were eligible to come. And so we did get some verbals and, yep, I just got to get the paperwork in, or I need to get a copy of XYZ. So we're crawling up, which isn't too far off from where we were last year at this time, which is hopeful, right? But we did pick up almost 20 students from spring to fall when school started last year. Is that typical? I don't have that answer.
So there's a couple of other variables that when we think about this, from a planning perspective, we've also had conversation, and when I say we, Cassie and I have had just facility conversations about what if we needed to add a section mid-year, because that could be a real possibility if we have a large number of move-ins that would impact let's say our first graders. That's 74 first graders is a lot of kids to have in even a 3.5 section. So really being mindful of, are there ways that we can proactively prepare in the event that we might need to think about something different? But so there's good discussion. The staff are Cassie's done a nice job of just laying foundational conversation with staff to get their feedback too on some of the best ideas. Our kindergarten teachers they know those kindergartners really well to know what would make the most sense from kind of clustering and grouping students, okay? So that we can maximize our student experience, and then also make sure that we keep those class sizes comfortable.
Being on the Community Service Center board, I know there's been an increase as we talk about usage of Hispanics moving into the area, and there are some Russian families moving into the area. So I don't know what you see or have heard as far as bilingual or even a single lingual, but it's not
called American.
Yeah.
No, more like not English speaking.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so as you look at, hopefully, I guess maybe in kindergarten they've picked up enough of the language as far as the kindergartners. If you had to split, say first and kindergarten, as far as doing that, but as far as bringing in kindergartners, that may not, the English may not be the primary language as far as dealing with that, so.
We've really, over the course of years, tried to seek some paraprofessional support, that might be a bilingual paraprofessional. It's really hard to find staff that are bilingual because that really is a beautiful opportunity to integrate kids into the curriculum and support them learning the language in addition to the curriculum. But there's just not a lot of bilingual paraprofessionals that are in our area.
You spoke a little bit about the multi-grades. I remember us doing that a number of years ago.
We
Was that
did.
during Bob Hewitt's era, I think. We did the
Yeah.
multi-grades, and there might even be instructors still there that were participants there. We never heard anything that I recall that was not positive out of that group, even though it's something we're not used to.
And I think that's one of the things that Cassie's been having conversation of what worked and what are the things that seemed to make sense. So really just having a lot of thoughtful conversation before we make a formal recommendation on sections, which I'm hoping we can do in April. So, okay. There's that first discussion of enrollment. Okay.
Did you have totals on the bottom of that sheet?
I think I did. Let me go back to it.
I should have looked it up.
So we are down from 912 to 890. Again, we have predicted that. We've budgeted for that. We've talked about that reduction from kindergarten because we're graduating our largest. So we're graduating 85, 84, depending on which month you look at, 84, 85 students.
So if you go back, 903, 893, 904, 912, 890. We're kind of in the same grouping.
And we're ballpark. Yep. And if you remember if you think about and I don't have it linked today and I can do that next meeting, but if you think about, the document that I show you that's got the red and the green, there's a lot of movement throughout the course of the year with students. And back in the day, boy, I sound old when I say that, but back in the day, we didn't have that fluidity of kids. There was much more stability. Today, students have much more option to come and go. And I think we have families that really just move more frequently than they used to for a number of reasons. Sometimes it's jobs, sometimes it's opportunity, sometimes we don't know why, but there's a lot more movement this time. Okay. All right. So then, any other questions before I move on? Okay. So the next piece is also another informational item. So we're kind of getting into gearing up for budget season. Again, we talk about the sections and that impacts our staffing and who's where. But I really want to show a little bit of a historical information. So where this data comes from is this is coming from, there's a report that the Minnesota Department of Education compiles that they gather all of our information and data from our audits. So if you think back to December, when our books are done, it's all posted and then they run it year over year, okay? And a lot of conversation takes place about an unassigned fund balance, okay? And so I want to take just a second to kind of show the past year's trends of where where our district has been, and then kind of how that looks. As I've sat here with board members, I've heard a lot of conversation about there was a time where the fund balance and budgets were really, really tight. If you look at this 2012, 13, 14, 15, those were those tight years, okay? So I also am gonna just kind of show you visually what that looks like. So this is what is kind of the trajectory of fund balances. We've got an increase in the fund balance, and then you see us kind of that top level, and then you start spending down. This is when I had conversation for the operating referendum, this was the trend I talked about, that often school districts, you do end up spending down your fund balance, and then when you pass a referendum, you have to be mindful about being responsible long-term with that budget and with that funding. I also thought it was interesting to just show kind of the enrollment for you. There are some little peaks in there, but there's a little bit of just a gradual decline, which is not anything that is a surprise when you look at the information that we've had over years past. Okay.
I have to laugh on that one a little bit. So 2 years back, I had people ask me if I was going to continue to run for the school board. And I said, well, why do you want me on the school board? Because it dropped from 1,000 kids to 950. So if you don't pay any attention to anything else, that doesn't look like I'm doing a very good job.
Well, okay, I guess I don't know if I want to stand behind that.
The other thing that when you get to the fund balances.
Yeah.
So I was here and with Cheryl for school. We didn't have any money. It didn't make any difference what came up. Everything was getting cut. We had to cut classes. We were in bad shape. We were going to go into operating deficit or whatever, and then the state steps in and helps you. Can't imagine how that would have been.
Right.
But anyway, they all go up. Well, when you start to come down, you get to a point, if you don't have increased funding, it drops off like dropping off the edge of a cliff.
Really
So when you take your chart there, where we added the referendum before we got to the bottom, it's making it look like we have an increase, but it's already set to drop off. And if you can keep that flowing, you don't have to get so strained like we were.
Yeah.
It wasn't any fun those first few years.
No.
We had stuff that we had to do with when there's no money, you have no options.
Yep.
And not that we're spending ridiculous here, because we've been always really conservative about that, but that fund balance always has to be there. In some form or another, because when if we wouldn't have had it approved last time, nothing would have been right down to the numbers in a short period of time that we had. And then you're gonna struggle. And you can see there was a referendum passed just before I got in, or real close in there.
Yep.
And we struggled for 3 years
Right.
just to get kind of like out of the
Yep.
hole.
Yep.
It was a
So that would have been
bugger.
those 3 years. So the referendum was in 2012. So it was 13, 14, 15. You can see that percent was just starting to climb out of 15, 16, 17. Yeah.
I have to just share one more thing.
Okay.
I saw us cut stuff, and I can remember having the conversation with the superintendent at that time. I said, are we kicking ourselves in the foot? We couldn't hire replacement teachers. There was not any options. Today, when we go over some of our reports, some of the areas that I thought we were gonna kick ourselves are still there.
Yeah.
It's like I'm being penalized. Just personally, I feel that's a penalty for me that we didn't have any options, that we had to make those cuts. And here it's still showing up in some of those. So it's long-term effect when you cut that off and you get down that thin.
So then I want to kind of talk through, this is also going to be a familiar sheet for you. And I want to talk through, where we are and where we've been. Okay. So 22-23 was originally predicted. So this was the budget that was about a little over 400,000, 450 deficit. And if you think back to 22-23, we had a really hard time hiring staff. Okay, we were super short staffed across many capacities. And then we had some special education funding that came in through. So, and I'm going to talk a little bit further about special education funding a little bit further down, so I won't get too deep into it, but there was some additional special ed funding that came in. So we ended up with a difference of 185,000 in the good. Okay. Now that was a year that we did make budget cuts and budget reductions because of the deficit budget that was approved. Okay. So then you look at 23-24. And you are not going to see a revised budget tonight, but I am going to kind of talk through this. So we have, our approved budget had a difference of $599,000. Okay. So we're sitting and looking at 817 right now. So why? Okay. So again, we had about a $200,000 shift in tuition for special education. So our special education funding is received based on prior year expenditures. And when the tuition billing process occurs, what happens is so if we have students that are served elsewhere, they withhold our funding. And then if we have students that we served from a different district, we get funding. It takes almost 1.5 years, 18 months to have kind of a settle up in that billing, which is why we are so very cautious when we use special education, when we budget for special education and when we book revenues or the revenue that comes in from the state, okay? So that being said, 23-24 is gonna look like we're ending it to 817,000 to the positive. So then let's take a look at what's going to happen for next year. So changes in revenue from 23-24 to 24-25. So I shared with you and you looked at that enrollment that we are going to lose 16 students, okay? So that equates to $167,000 in revenue less. Well, we have a per pupil funding increase. So remember I said we get a 2% increase, about $143. So we're going to earn $140,000, but we're losing $167,000. So it's really a wash of our increase in state aid to the number of students that we've lost. So that's something that we really want to be mindful of from a revenue perspective. The local optional revenue with our property tax changes has had an increase of $47,000. We also lost the remaining portion of our ESSER money. Okay, so this was 23-24 was the last, that $43,000, that was it, okay?
What's ESS or what's the?
ESSER is the COVID money. It's the money from the federal government for the, and there was multiple funds, but this was the last of, we were able to spend it over, I think 3 years. And this was the last. It was COVID money. Yep. Yep. ESSER is COVID money. Yep. And then the increase in compensatory revenue. So again, compensatory revenue is the revenue that the district received. It used to be from the forms that families would fill out. Now it's based on a direct certification. So it's a little bit more consistent. There's ongoing conversation at the legislature about how to hold districts harmless so that when you have changes in either that the direct certification from medical assistance or families are not completing the application for educational benefits that we're going to start calling it. Thomas, I like that. But it really is, that's another area that's fluid. But that funding also is very targeted where you have to use it in the sites that it has been generated from. And that's new. In the years past, you could use it for whatever you wanted to use it for, to offset whether it be like a targeted intervention or to have some smaller class sizes. Now you have to do it if I'm going to just use round numbers. Let's say 150,000 was generated from the elementary, 150 has to be applied to the elementary. Okay, so that's a shift in from previous years.
But that goes by students that fall under that, right? So if they leave, or those families that fall under that, if they leave, then that money's cut off, right? So is that a month-to-month amount that we get, or is it set at the beginning of the year that you have X amount of students that have the educational benefit and you get a lump sum?
No,
October 1.
it's our child count.
Got you. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Thank you, Carrie. So a net change in revenue from 23-24 to 24-25 is a loss of estimated to be $37. Okay. So then let's take a look at what we're anticipating for some expenditures in 23-24 to 24-25. So what we're looking at is from an increase in personnel costs, and these are entirely estimates. Every negotiations is in the works right now. And so these are purely estimates. Okay. But this would be based on kind of the discussions that we've had thus far. Okay. You will see the things that are removed from there. Q comp is money that is included that we can't include in our budget. You'll also see like school board's salaries, those are removed. So it's just really the 24-25 general fund payroll, okay? I'm also gonna talk through as one of the other considerations, I think I've said in years past, Carrie she is actually technically retired. So we do have to be, planning for, a transition and some, in that position. And then we've also had a change in our tech support. If you think about, I'm gonna just go down to the next because I'll show you, have some descriptor of each of those. So when you look at our net change of expenditures from 23-24 to 24-25, what we're looking at is $491,000 in increase of expenditures, which is going to bring what we would be able to put into our fund balance from a more of like a $599,000 where we started this year down to 326. So we're still being responsible and we're still taking that into account. Yet it's something we want to be mindful of so that when we have those increased expenditures without the additional funding, we're not having to impact staff and students. Okay, so those are some of the things that I want you to kind of keep in mind as I walk through some of the assumptions. So when we do budgeting, we do make some large assumptions, and you're going to see this is predicting contract settlements in the numbers, which is that's unfortunately when you talk about negotiating contracts, you just kind of have to make a guess. And these are based on our best guess estimates based on where we are today. So they could go up and they could be stable, right? But those are things that we have to be mindful of. We also have to be mindful that we have, up until the last 2 days, we've had less expenditures for snow removal. I think I'm sorry if I jinxed that by putting that on a piece of paper. But there are some things that we do need to just be mindful of, that we have had in expenditures in years past, that we are able to have some savings this year, but that's not typical, okay? So some variabilities in consideration. So this budget does include special education cross-subsidy reduction aid. So the cross-subsidy is the amount that it costs to provide the special education staff in excess of special education revenue that we receive, okay? So that's what the cross subsidy is. So when you see cross subsidy reduction, this is a reimbursement for expenditures that have already been made, okay? And again, if you come back up and look at this dollar amount up here where we went from $599 to $817, 200,000 of that, 220, was special education revenue, okay? It's really unpredictable. If I could ever figure out how to predict it, and I could make school districts I would make lots of money consulting with school districts, because boy, it'd be a wizard. It's just really, really hard. And as a former special education director, I understand why that is, okay? So the other piece that I am taking into account is, as Thomas referenced earlier, there are some facility needs. We've talked a lot about our softball complex, our roofing, and there's a budget in the long-term facility maintenance money for science labs. All of those are budgeted, but for example, the softball complex, there are components of that we won't be able to use long-term facility maintenance fund money for. So as we look at putting up, I'm going to use the wrong term, crow's nest. What would it be? What would it sit up there? The tower where people announce, what would that be called?
The press box.
Press box, thank you. So if we would put something so that we could access both fields, that building structure cannot be paid for out of long-term facility maintenance money. Now, the bathrooms that go into that, they could be paid for out of long-term facility maintenance as long as they're gender neutral. So this is going to be a hodgepodge of funding that's going to come together. All of these things have been talked about and planned for, but it's also part of why we need to be really mindful about overexpending too much too quickly, okay? You'll also see in there that we have, there's two very unexpected costs that have come up within the last month. We have a heat exchanger that needs to be replaced that was original to the high school building. That's kind of where some of our equipment is. It's going to have to start being replaced. So part of what I really appreciated Ken doing is he brought me 3 different options. He said, well, you can buy a new one, you can fix it and not quite know, or you can rebuild it. And I said, what's the best recommendation? So he got multiple quotes, but that's looking at $22,000, right? That's money that if we didn't have, that money has to come out of the fund balance, okay? We also had 2 kitchen ovens that need to be replaced. I don't know if anybody knows, but the building here has incredibly hard water. And our 2 ovens in the kitchen, the water has corroded the stainless steel. And so I'm pretty sure that our kids don't want to be eating cold lunch and baked sandwiches every day. I know I sure don't. I kind of like the school lunch. So that's again, a quote that came in for $38,000. Now, I will be transparent and honest. The food service, the ovens come out of the food service fund balance. Okay. But that's what they're there for. And that's an eligible cost. And that's why that money is earmarked and targeted. Okay. So as I mentioned, we are anticipating some transition costs for training, stipend, and salary, conservatively estimating for 24-25, looking to scale up. And I'm hoping that over the course of time that then we'll have some, we'll have a little bit more consistent support in that area. And Carrie will be able to take her vacations without me stressing. We are taking a look at our technology assistant. So if you recall, we have, when Jonah retired, we really tried to hire a tech director, and we weren't able to find one, and we weren't able to find one that would accept it for really kind of where we can afford to pay. That being said, we were able to contract with POTUS Tech, and POTUS has done a really nice job understanding our network, picking up kind of the security components, like the high level, like they're keeping the skeleton in line of our structure. Okay. What we were missing was the in-person support so that when the staff has something that happens with their computer and their Chromebook, or we have a student who is, they can't get on to whatever they need to get on. They don't have the apps loaded. They don't have access to the instruction that's happening. We needed people here. So then we originally looked at having 2 tech assistants. Unfortunately, that just wasn't a great fit, but one of those was an amazing fit. And that is the position that we're looking at restructuring to build her capacity as a full 260-day contract. So those costs are built in and anticipated. Some other things that are in the works that are not necessarily built in because they came up really, really high. I've talked to you about our audio enhancement and our PA system at this building. Those cost estimates came in incredibly high. And I've been visiting with them to try to figure out ways that we could either split that. And could we do the audio enhancements at the elementary and a PA system at the secondary? But those are a lot of moving parts. So remember I said this time of year is all about the moving parts. That's some of the moving parts. I'm not super excited about going an extended amount of time in this building without having a PA system that works. A year ago, actually, the way that I kind of look forward to this is a year ago, we were reviewing our building evacuation. Okay. It's really important that we can communicate across our building. Okay. So it's not something that we want to just do nothing, but we need to be mindful of the cost long-term as well. We are anticipating unemployment reimbursement for hourly staff without legislative action. So again, this summer that had been paid for, all said and done, it was about $56,000 over the first 2 terms. I'll put the last one in there and get that back to you, Ron. But so those are costs that we have to be mindful of how are they going to be paid for if legislative action doesn't take place. Just as an aside, legislatively, the conversation that's happening right now is that could possibly be levied. And I don't know how that conversation would go. So we'd have to be really paying attention to that as well. In 25-26, we have paid family leave. So as a reminder, that is it'll be very similar to a payroll tax for the employee pays portion and employer pays portion, but those are costs that now we will have be mandated to pay in 25, 26. We need to be paying attention to that because those are increased costs for us in the future. So I also think it's important to look at cautionary planning if the tech levy fails. The district would need to assume $321,000 per year in expenditures out of the general fund. So if it passes, we're going to be able to maintain our focus. We're not adding anything if it passes. It is purely to maintain focus and then continue to be responsible so that over the course of years, when people asked me last year, as we were having conversation about the operating referendum, when I would say to them, this is not going to be enough. And they said, well, why aren't you asking for more? And my response was, we need community support. With all things considered, we can be more responsible and try to extend this operating referendum to the 20 years, is my hope if we're responsible at this point in time looking forward. So that's a lot of information and it's a lot of considerations and variability, but I think it's really important to keep in mind as we move forward and have conversations about budget development. But I also think, keeping in mind just the history and where we are today and how to look forward. It's just preliminary information for you as board members. Okay. So again, this does not require any action. You'll have an opportunity to look at it and please don't hesitate to email me questions. If you get questions within the community, please let me know. And I can clarify and add more details in the future. Okay.
When I read it initially, I thought it was a very nice summary. All the things that we got to be aware of and all the moving parts that are consistent.
There's just a lot.
Okay, the policy committee did meet. And so we have, this is the first reading, correct? First reading of 3 policies.
Do you want me to highlight those?
Did you all get a chance to look at it? They're really good. Changes.
They're edits and statutory reference and there's no meat change to any of them. Okay. All right. So just as noted too, Rick, those will be available in the district office for 20 days if there's any questions or comments from the public as well.
Maybe you should mention which policies they are.
Sure, absolutely. So policy 807 is our health and safety policy. So we partner with Resource Training and Solutions, and they really help us to make sure that we're testing our lead water testing. That's done on time. We've got the health and safety trainings that all of our employees have to be part of. So this health and safety policy really outlines. And if you scroll down a little ways, you'll see a list of all of the things that we have and that we are responsible for. So again, we've got a great relationship with Resource Training and Solutions. When I talked about a little bit earlier, just a reference to the science labs. Anytime we look at doing any type of renovation within this building, we have to consider asbestos because of the era that this building was built. So again, it's just the work that we do with Resource Training and Solutions, but it aligns with this policy. The next policy was policy 902. 902 is our use of school facilities. So this really outlines the role of community ed and how individuals within our community, if they want to use our facilities, the process to do that, whether it's a school function, if it's a community function, if it's somebody that just wants to rent our space. This outlines all of those activities and guidelines. The district does have a procedure for the rentals that has been developed. It was revised when the PAC opened, but it has been in existence for years. And then policy 903 is visitors to the school. Essentially, What this does is this dictates for principals that they have to have a process to ensure that if visitors come to the school, they know how to make sure that people can access, whether it's classrooms or whether it's students or whether it's, even just signing in, how you enter the building during the school day as a visitor. So those are that's the gist of those policies.
Okay,
Perfect.
upcoming meetings. Got custodial negotiations, school board work session, we also have the teacher negotiation Thursday. District-wide staff development on the 17th and our regular school board meeting on the 23rd.
I'd like to make a request on April 2nd. I would like to attend the meeting on Google Meet. And I will disclose I'll be at the Holiday Inn in Fargo, North Dakota, and I'll be in the lobby. So I do not want to miss that meeting, and I'll attend it on Google Meet.
The negotiation session.
Custodial.
Okay. All right.
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn? Ron makes a motion.
I'll second.
I'll go Rachel.
All right.
Over tonight, so all in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.